Okay, good afternoon. So as you know, the government is working hard to keep New Zealanders healthy, which is somewhat ironic because I've got a bit of a head cold, but anyway. We're investing nearly $16 billion a year into health, more than ever before. We've introduced free doctors' visits for children under 13, reduced cancer treatment waiting times, increased elective surgery, and improving screening and disease prevention. Reducing rheumatic fever has also been a priority of the government. That's why we set ourselves a better public services target of reducing rheumatic fever by 2/3 by June 2017. As you've probably seen today from Health Minister Jonathan Coleman's announcement, we've today announced that there's been a significant drop in the number of people hospitalised with rheumatic fever. 98 people were hospitalised in 2015, compared with 177 in 2012. That represents a 45% reduction. Rates for Māori have more than halved since 2012, down 54%. There's also been a drop of 27% for Pacific people. This is great progress and reflects the hard work being carried out by the health sector and communities most at risk of rheumatic fever. Shows the 65 million investment the government has made to prevent rheumatic fever is making a real difference. We need to keep the momentum going to achieve the target and ensure the gains we make for vulnerable young people are sustainable. Tomorrow the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary Bill will be introduced to Parliament. This bill will allow for the creation of a fully protected ocean sanctuary, one of the largest ocean sanctuaries and most significant. It will also prevent all fishing and mining in the area. This bill is part of our commitment to responsibly manage our environment for future generations and build on the government's efforts to better protect our oceans. As you know, the first roadshow of the Trans-Pacific Partnership was held in Auckland today. It is the first of 16 roadshows in Hui throughout New Zealand. The TPP has been the most widely consulted free trade agreement in New Zealand's history, and this conversation will continue through 2016. While we believe this FTA is of undeniable and significant benefit to New Zealanders, we want to give every Kiwi who has an interest an opportunity to ask questions. This includes exporters seeking new opportunities under the TPP and anyone who has questions or concerns. The roadshows are designed to allow open debate, informed discussion and a clear path forward for businesses that recognise the benefits of a market that compromises 36% of the world's GDP. Just in terms of the House this week in Parliament, we will be progressing the Employment Standards Bill, the Māori Language Bill and the Building Amendment Bill. In terms of my own activities, I'm in Wellington today, tomorrow and Wednesday. I'm in Whangarei on Thursday, Hamilton on Friday, and I'll be at the New Zealand Golf Open in Queenstown on the weekend. Sorry, I'm just a little pressed for time today, so I'm going to try and get out of here by 4:30, but we'll see how it goes.
With the Kermadec Sanctuary, have you resolved those issues with iwi or with consultation?
Yeah, I mean, look, we continue to have those discussions. We're aware of the issues that have been raised. I mean, one of the main points I'd simply make is that Māori are often, raising with us the issues of environmental protection. And so one would have thought that they would see, the step that we're taking there as a very important but positive step for environmental protection. We understand there are one or two people with quota rights, but they've never taken up the quota there. And largely what they would even catch, if they could catch it, would be migratory species like tuna, which they can catch somewhere else. So, we're aware of it, but we still want to press it here with the legislation.
And with those other sanctuaries in Marlborough and Hauraki Gulf, are you planning to make recreational fishers come or report their catch?
I'm not sure about where we're at with that. I mean, obviously we are trying to progress those. And historically, no, they haven't reported their catch. They certainly have a bag limit, as you're aware, but we make an informed assessment of what we think is happening. What we do know is that fundamentally more people are catching fish from a recreational perspective, and they're more efficient at catching fish. So the best estimates that we can see from MPI see a very substantial increase in the take that's happening from the recreational side. But I don't think at this point there's any plan to say tell us exactly how many snapping you caught on a particular day when you're fishing.
But you think there is a case for eventually for them to have to do that?
We haven't really considered. I mean, you'd have to think through, of course, the logistics of that. And it's one thing for someone to have a quota that they've bought or they acquired in some way, and obviously accurate recording against that quota is relatively straightforward and well documented. stigmatised thing to do. You know, having someone come along and say, okay, well, I went out this afternoon, the boat limit was X number of snapper, and I either did or didn't catch that. Just logistically, it's a lot harder. You could certainly see over time how, in theory, people voluntarily might put up that information, but it wouldn't be a perfect example.
And have the seafood industry been lobbying you on this? They're obviously keen for the tech to be documented.
Look, they may well have to the MPI minister, they haven't directly with me.
Have you sorted those issues with iwi regarding the Kumiri?
Well, I think there's been discussions we've been making our point. I mean, as I said, you know, they have had some quota, or I think the capacity to catch fish there, but they haven't ever caught fish as I understand in that area.
Are iwi going to be part of the governance of that sanctuary?
We're working our way through the process of how that might work, but it's not impossible that if there's a governance structure, as there has been with other areas, for instance, Fiordland, we did something down there. There was iwi representation on the governing committee, and it's quite possible that would be the case with the Kumlex.
Could iwi still fish, is it possible that the iwi with the quota there could still fish there when it's a sanctuary?
No.
Would that be
No, they're completely, everyone's excluded, including a yacht sailing through the Kumedek region, throwing a line out to catch their own dinner. It's a no-take zone.
Can we expect compensation?
It's not our intention to do that. It's a migratory species, and they could potentially catch it somewhere else.
Prime Minister, the Australian Defence White Paper describes the New Zealand-Australia defence relationship as a relationship within ANZUS. Is that the way New Zealand sees it?
You're asking whether we're still part of ANZUS?
I'm asking whether or not you see the Australian-New Zealand defence relationship as an ANZUS relationship.
It's probably described more as an ANZAC relationship. I mean, in so much that Australia and New Zealand work together on some of these issues, not always. They have a very different defence profile and capability, obviously, to New Zealand, but they're well and truly aware that a long time ago we suspended ANZUS, and we've got no intention of rejoining.
So why did they put it in their white paper? And they had consulted New Zealand, they said.
You have to ask them. They write lots of things down, or describe things in different ways to us.
Just on burglaries, are those low resolution rates an incentive for criminals to actually have a crack at robbing people?
Well, a few things I'd say. Firstly, the burglary rate is dropping, as is the overall crime rate. Secondly, I can absolutely understand the frustration of people when they are burgled. People feel as though, and I think rightfully so, that it's an invasion of their privacy. They feel violated by that often. And often you actually see a situation where the goods that are stolen aren't necessarily of such a high economic value, but they're often of a very high sentimental value. So there's a lot of pain and suffering from burglary. I think the police genuinely do what they can to successfully resolve burglaries, but you'll appreciate that sometimes they just don't have a lot of leads or a lot of things to work on.
Have you been burgled?
Yeah, it would be funny if we were talking about in my office. Yeah, I have actually on about 3 or 4 occasions.
And did the police solve those burglaries?
Well, they did actually, and I remember the most recent one was when I was leader of the opposition, and the person got sent, I think a couple of them got sent to prison. They had a pee habit, they were trying to support, they burgled our place since Stephen's End.
So you understand how important it is for people when their home gets invaded like that?
Yeah, well, the particular person, and I think this is not, I mean, it won't always be the same profile, but it's possibly similar. The person people that undertook the burglary at our place, as it turned out, had undertaken a lot of burglaries in the area. So one of the reasons why the police obviously do follow up, other than just their sheer responsibility and everything else, is that I think there's sometimes people that undertake a lot of burglaries, and so that getting information that can allow them to solve multiple crimes is something that they're trying to do. Clearly, the police have to prioritise what they're doing, and so if you have a potentially violent domestic situation, that they are asked to attend vis-a-vis going to a burglary, the burglary will get pushed down the pecking order. Some of them will turn up, but it might take 2 or 3 days.
Where were your other burglaries?
So Wellington.
Premier House?
Yeah, well, not Premier House, no. So when we first lived in Johnsonville, we were burgled then. When we were in Burwood Crescent, we literally had the house cleaned out. So we were burgled there. Place I can't remember. So we've had 3 or 4, I think.
Were they all resolved?
Honestly, no. Actually, I think I don't think in the case of Johnsonville, but I think in the case of Burwood Crescent, they definitely were. because they stole Brenda's birthday present at the time, which was a pink Honda City, and that was of some amusement to the cops at the time that I was stupid enough to buy her a pink Honda City. But anyway,
When are we going to see the security and intelligence review?
it goes to the ISC tomorrow, so the committee makes the decision about, you know, when it will be released, but with a bit of luck, to my view would be it should be released as soon as practically possible.
So we can
So
see
the
it
latter
this
part of this week, I would have hoped.
And will we see it in full or will it be
Yeah.
reversed? So it's not top.
It was written in a way where it's not redacted and it should be released in full.
And when's the government likely to make its response? What's in there?
Well, the ISC will meet tomorrow, and you're obviously aware that Labor are on that committee with us, so that'll be an opportunity for them to sort of, you know, have a bit of a discussion about it. You've probably seen my public comments in the past already that we want to move forward on a bipartisan basis if we can. So that'll give us our first chance to, I think, just talk through the recommendations and, you know, the merits of the recommendations that are being made, and then we'll see how things progress from there.
Do you think the Greens have got an argument that they're not on the ISC?
Well, in the end, it's a matter for the opposition to decide who they have on. I mean, personally, I think it makes sense for them not to be there because, you know, at the moment, the ISC is made of 5 members, and so the opposition takes 2 of those spots. And at the moment, you've obviously got Andrew Little and David Shearer, so if the Greens were on, you'd only have 1 Labor member. And in reality, there are, you know, if you think about it from a proportional point of view, you know, if the Greens, then why wouldn't you potentially have, say, New Zealand First or someone else? So I think in a lot of senses this is one of those things where Labor and National are rightfully the people that should be guiding this.
Also on Landcorp, they've decided to step away from investing so much into the Wairaki estate.
Yeah.
Is it a signal for them that dairy's kind of had its day?
No, I think there's a number of things going on. You probably saw their result, which was, you know, I think they made a loss on their return. And certainly, even over the years, when dairy prices were higher, there's been quite a low return on capital. So I think the decision they've made, firstly, is, you know, this isn't the right time to be investing more. That's probably consistent with what a lot of other private sector dairy investors are doing at the moment, holding back a bit and not necessarily investing. Their balance sheet is a bit challenged at the moment. It's a big, as I understand, they're ploughing a lot of capital, and the government's been reluctant to put in more capital, so we said to them they've got to fund their own development there. So I'm not terribly surprised they're doing what they're doing, but whether that means, you know, you should buy a dairy farm or invest in a dairy farm is a completely different issue, I think.
The Landcorp CEO today said that because of the environmental constraints, particularly Central Plateau, that he didn't think there was much room for, at least for that area, to increase dairy production. Surely the government and Fonterra need more conversions to meet its targets for increasing production.
Yeah, I haven't had a good look at all that, but some years ago, and I was trying to think back to when, you know, whether I was leader of the opposition or, you know, fairly early days as Prime Minister, I actually flew over that area with the regional council there, and they were talking about, you know, obviously pointing out the big piece of land that is Wairaki pastoral that was going to be converted into dairy farms. One of the points they were making at the time was that Landcorp were a very high quality farmer, so they had undertaken a lot of work to try and mitigate the environmental impacts. And their main argument was if you know, that we did have to be careful about intensification, but if you were asking them to pick and choose between Landcorp as a developer vis-a-vis some other existing farms, they'd be picking Landcorp because everything they were doing was done to the highest environmental standard. But in the end, that's the point is, you know, we have seen with the establishment of, you know, water standards and the likes, you have seen more work going into what is the appropriate level of intensification. And actually, as you've seen in places like around Lake Taupo and Rotoiti, I think, you know, quite significant steps being taken to say, you know, there are certain waterways that join, or land areas that join waterways that shouldn't actually be farmed for dairy and the likes.
Landcorp's still planning to invest another $130 million though in
Yeah.
Wairaki, some couple of sheep farms and still an extra 5,000 cows.
Yeah.
That's going to increase its gearing. Are you concerned or worried that they might be increasing their gearing too much?
Well, there's been concerns, and you'll be aware that last year I think there were significant discussions between the board of Landcorp and I think the Minister of Finance about how they might finance what they're doing. The government's been making it pretty clear to them that if they want to increase the capital investment they have at Wairaki Pastoral, they're fully free to do that, but they need to manage their own balance sheet and invest where they see the best return. And that's ultimately a matter for Yeah, so when we went through the legislation that was required to set up the referendum, I'm pretty sure embedded in that legislation was that effectively you didn't need to go back to Parliament to change the Flags and Emblems Act, it just automatically happens. But the question, of course, is, once it's by order of council, so at some point, that would need to take effect. I think the general proposition we've been working towards is if the flag changes, then the first time we probably officially use it might be the Rio Olympics.
The New Zealand sailing teams going to Rio put out a statement saying that they're trialling different sails with the two different flags on because they need to have them both ready.
Right.
But presumably that's adding to their cost. Has there been any government contribution or any have they come to you for anything?
Not
Any
as far as
assistance
I'm
with
aware,
that?
no.
How concerned are you about the National Party resignations in Clutha Southland?
Well, I just don't have any real details on it. It's not unusual for there to be a change of staff and a change of MP. I mean, people who work in offices, out of parliamentary offices, like people who are on the political staff, are on events-based contracts. Now, this is different because that didn't trigger that, but it is the reason they're events-based is quite often there is change when there's a change of member.
But when you have the
Prime
electorate
Minister-
chairman saying his position's untenable and the electoral agent having to sign a confidentiality agreement due to an employment issue, surely that's a little unusual, isn't it?
I just don't have all those details. I mean, I understand at the heart of it, if I read the papers and the media reports, there's obviously a disputed employment contract there, or employment issue there, but I just don't have all those details.
Have you spoken to Todd Barclay about it, or will you
I
speak to him? Will you?
It's not my intention at this point, no.
Are you aware of the allegation of secret recording going on?
Well, I've seen media reports of that, but I don't have any other information than that.
Okay, and that doesn't merit anything more than sort of an informal chat with Bill English? You don't want to take it any further?
Well, it's not a matter for me. If there is an employment dispute, then parties will take that up through the relevant channels that they decide to. I mean, every MP has effective employment agreements with the people that work for them, and they manage them. It's not unusual that there's change of staff, or from time to time there are disagreements, from time to time people leave. Unfortunately, that's the nature of what goes on. If there are any issues of concerns, then people should bring it forward and have it appropriately dealt with.
Party members in the electorate have talked about concerns over a lack of honesty, a lack of integrity, a lack of maturity, and there's a suggestion that it may be turning some voters, constituents off Nationals. Is that a concern to you?
It's nothing I've seen of any evidence that would support that, and so I haven't seen anything that would support that view.
Wouldn't you want to reassure yourself that any employment issues between the MP and his or her staff in any MP's case wasn't something that should be of concern to you?
Well, from time to time there are disputes where people have an employment dispute with their EA or someone that works on their team or their electorate staff. Look, it hasn't been my practice over the last 8 years to get involved in those.
So they're employed by parliamentary service or they're employed by the party?
I imagine these people probably by parliamentary services, because I think they're electorate staff, aren't they?
And has Peter Goodfellow asked for a police explain, or has he been
Don't know, you'd have to ask him. He hasn't raised the issue with me.
Prime Minister, the inquiry into the balcony collapse and
Aye.
and Nick Smithson ordered the inquiry into it. To what end is that inquiry being undertaken?
I don't have really any more details other than he's ordered the inquiry and we're having a look at the matter. Obviously, there's been, I think, a number of video images or reports or surveillance that's been now put out in the public domain. I think all he's doing is asking the obvious questions about the building standards and whether they were met when the balcony was actually constructed, not whether there was too many people on it or what it should be able to withstand. I think that's all for another debate, but he's just asking the obvious question about whether the building standards were met.
If they weren't met, would you expect some...
Well, I don't know what would happen next, really. We'd have to wait and see.
On health funding, would you expect in the budget for the government to loosen the purse strings a bit on Pharmac and on broader health funding?
It's highly likely there'll be more money for Pharmac. There'll, without question, be more money for health. I mean, every year there has been, and it's usually the largest bite of the cherry goes to health. So there'll, without doubt, be more money. And as I said last week, it's my expectation there'll probably be more money for Pharmac. Ultimately, how Pharmac spend that money is a matter for them. I think they, like everyone else, will be conscious of the public debate that's ongoing at the moment in relation to melanoma funding. I've seen their public comments over the weekend. Exactly what they'll use that money for, I don't know, but it's highly likely they'll get more.
And in December, the government increased its capital infrastructure spending allowance. Do you think that there's room or necessity to do that even more in May?
In general, you mean? It may be. We haven't put the budget to bed yet, so we go through this process where let's say blindly obvious, every minister puts forward their wish list, and then the Minister of Finance and his and her assistants get the great job of culling those out and making it fit within the new budget spending component. That's true both for capital and for operation. And we haven't decided that yet. We had obviously a number of meetings, got a bit of a sense of where we're going, a bit of a sense of what's happening, but it's pretty early days yet.
What's your sense though?
Oh, we're making good progress, feeling good about it, but the crunchy decisions have got to happen in the next few weeks.
Do you think that fisheries settlements with those iwi who are a bit disillusioned with the Kermadec plan, will they have to be renegotiated?
No.
Why is that?
Well, because Parliament has sovereign right to do what it likes, and then Parliament will be voting for it to be a ocean sanctuary.
So would it be a breach of that settlement then?
In my opinion, no.
So it might be a breach of those fishery settlements?
But what did I just answer that question to? You just asked me that question and I said no. I can say no to you twice if you want, but
Okay,
that's
so
the answer I
it won't
gave.
breach settlements even though the Kermadec area is in the settlement?
Well, it doesn't matter, does it? I mean, the point is Parliament's sovereign, has the right to decide whether something's a sanctuary or not. If it decides something's a sanctuary, it's not going to pay compensation, it doesn't need to. And the reason it doesn't need to is it's a migratory species, you can catch it somewhere else.
The Waitangi Tribunal's just announced the hearing dates for the TPP claim. Would that hold any credence with you if they found there were concerns for Māori?
Well, the Waitangi Tribunal more often than not always finds against the government. It doesn't mean it will do, but you have to say it's long history as it does.
Just going back quickly to the burglaries, why do you, 3 or 4 times, it's quite a few times, why do you think you were targeted because you're Prime Minister or because you have a nice house?
No, I wasn't Prime Minister, but any of the times it happened, I was leader of the opposition once, and the rest of the time I was just a normal citizen. I don't know, we had pretty good security at our house, and we were just unlucky.
Do
At
you
St
think
Stephen's, why didn't
police-
you have an alarm?
We did.
Oh, what happened to the alarm?
Well, I was on a plane to Hawaii, it was over Christmas.
And nobody took any notice of it?
No, I think they took notice, but it's not instant, is it?
It's
One of the
a
other
couple of
times was
company
there, and when I was there, I went downstairs and there was a burglar there.
Did they confront you?
In the flesh.
Sadly, yes.
Did you confront him?
Yeah, well, the wife sent me down to sort it out. And then we thought at the time it was a joke, because, well, not a joke, but we thought the alarm was going off because the weather was so bad. As it turned out, there was actually someone downstairs. I started screaming, and next thing you know, the cops turned up. But yeah, I was leader of the opposition then too.
Did the burglar run?
Sorry?
Did the burglar run when you started?
Yeah, he ran.
screaming?
Yeah, he ran, but it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was terribly wet night, and I have great respect for the police because they turned up in Alsatian in about 60 seconds, but they didn't catch the person.
Do you think you got more vigilant treatment from the police because of your position at the time?
I don't think so, but I mean, you appreciate that we have high levels of security at our house because I'm Prime Minister nowadays, so it's a slightly different deal. But I mean, Helen Clark was Prime Minister when someone went into her house.
Did you
That
take
happens.
Did you take a weapon of like a baseball bat or anything?
No, we thought the alarm was going off because the weather was bad, so I just wandered downstairs.
Sorry, where was that? Which property were you living in?
St Stephen's.
Sorry, can I just ask you on something else?
Yeah.
Just a nanny who was within Australia has complained about her treatment. She was arrested here for a break in the visa. She was kept in jail overnight.
Oh, this is in Queenstown,
Yeah.
eh?
Does that seem appropriate that she was treated in that way?
On the very limited knowledge of the facts I have, no. I mean, it might be technically what they could have done, but I think there are other options of how they could have handled the situation.
Like,
I think she was an au pair, wasn't she? She was coming over here. Given what went on, you might have hoped that they might have been able to find another way through that, but I only have really limited details, and there may be another explanation of it, but you would have hoped that that wouldn't necessarily be the case.
what particularly concerns you about?
Oh, just because it didn't seem like it was so significant that they couldn't have dealt with the issue another way. I think she just said that she was going to babysit when she was in New Zealand because she theoretically didn't have a work permit. Then they sent her back, and they kept her overnight, I think. But I don't know anything more than that.
Do you think she should have been allowed to stay?
Well, it sounds pretty harsh deporting someone because they're babysitting when they're an au pair.
Have you asked for a police explain?
Well, I just got advised of it when I was by one of the ministers, so I think they're already looking at it.
Do you think, does it concern you she was kept in jail? Does that seem the
Well, that's what
the
seemed,
way that she's been
there were two parts of it that seemed pretty heavy-handed, yeah.
Prime Minister, it caused quite an upset that no one from the national government was represented at Dr. Aminu Walker's funeral.
I don't know why that was actually. I mean, I can find out, and maybe it was just uncoordinated on our side, and everyone thought someone else was going. Here, I think, has been either sick or overseas, and a bit of a combination of both. In fact, she's been overseas and sick. Chris, I'm not sure, would normally go. So it certainly wouldn't have been a snub. We had great respect for what he'd done.
Has anybody contacted the family to extend
I've written a letter, which I signed out a few days ago.
Just to clarify, when you confronted the burglar, were you clothed? in
Oh.
any way?
Yes, I was clothed. Thank you.
I'm sure he wasn't going to